Now. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Voices of Women. We would like to begin our morning with a little tribute to one of our friends that Pat Marks is going to present.
Good afternoon and welcome. Today's vow program is dedicated to the memory of Mary Hardy, who passed away on February 7th, 2023. She was a founding member of Voices of Women, whose mission is to inspire voices of women in the church. This quote from Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg makes me think of Mary, whose passion was strong in her caring for others. Fight for the things you care about, but do it in a way that will lead others to join you. She did fight for the things she cared about and led us to join her. May we have a moment of silence as we reflect on her life.
It's my pleasure today to introduce Sonja Livingston. How is our sound? Can you hear me okay? Okay, no? How is that? Is that better? Okay, we'll do our best. We're looking into new sound systems for down here. Sonja is the author of 4 books, including Ghost Bread and an award-winning account, which is an award-winning account of childhood poverty in Rochester, which has been widely adopted for classroom use, and her most recent essay collection, The Virgin Prince of Prince Street, which explores her return to her childhood church. What was your childhood church? Corpus Christi. Okay. Her interests include women's lives, social class, and Catholicism. Sonja, who completed Richard Rohr's Living School through the Center of Action and Contemplation, is an associate professor of creative writing at Virginia Commonwealth University. She splits her time between Rochester and Richmond. So we're very pleased to have her with us today. One of the reasons we asked Sonja to visit us today was one of her most recent articles in America Magazine of August 2021 that was entitled, Richard Rohr's Living School is no utopia, but it taught me to love our imperfect world. This is the last paragraph of that article. I had imagined the Living School would somehow transform me into a more spiritual being, and that unlike the church, the program would somehow be perfect. 2 years later, neither is true, but I feel more bound to my faith and to attempting to love the world as it is, with all its noise and weeds and complications, to see everywhere as sacred ground. So today, oops, there we go. Sonja is going to talk about Against the Grain of the World, the Radical Gift of Lent. Humility, stillness, surrender. These central aspects of Christianity seem increasingly disconnected from the values of the larger world. There may be good reasons for this, such as concepts can be problematic, especially for women or traditionally disenfranchised communities. Sharing a handful of poems, prayers, and readings gathered along her faith journey, this interactive session describes Sonja's journey to these life-changing concepts while exploring the opportunities and overlooked gifts of the Lenten season. So we welcome all of you here today. Please feel free to get up and get more refreshments because we don't want to take them home, okay? And there will be some opportunities for interactive talk and for your participation. So I have a microphone here that I can bring to the tables almost all the way. I can't make it to that table, so you'll have to get up if you want to talk. And we welcome your interactive, your thoughts and your heartfelt reactions today. We are going to try to keep it to 1 hour. We are recording the session. Can we have a nice warm welcome for Sonja Livingston?
Thank you, Sue, and thank you for being here. I was expecting 8 people, 8 wonderful people, but so really nice to see all your faces. One of the things, though, is that I made handouts, and I thought that 20 would be plenty, but it's not plenty. So I put a couple at every table, and if you would just share those with each other. Basically, I'm going to talk a little bit about what Sue mentioned, which was my journey, a little bit about my journey back to church, but particularly these concepts that are embedded in or I guess supported by the Lenten season. But I really want the bulk of our time together to be interactive and maybe even a bit of a workshop. So I will just talk a little bit. I wrote my notes down on index cards because my printer failed this morning. So I want to begin with a poem, which is on the top sheet of the handout, if you're lucky enough to have one. Again, if you're at a table with 4 or 5 people, maybe you put it in the center, and I'll share digital copies of these for anybody who's interested after this talk. So it's a very short poem, maybe the shortest poem by Mary Oliver. How many people here know the poet Mary Oliver? Yeah, she's a good one to read. She's a good one to read at any season, but she's got particularly some poems that are just great for the Lenten season. Why? Because she's not afraid of putting sadness and pain in her poem alongside beauty. She understands that they go together, that those two things go together. So anyway, this poem is called The Uses of Sorrow. Someone I loved once gave me a box full of darkness. It took me years to understand that this too was a gift. When I first read that poem, I don't think I liked it very much. I thought, what's wrong with Mary Oliver? Should I be concerned that she's okay with this? But actually I chose that one because it reminds me a lot of what I think of as the gifts of Lent. And I'm saying the gifts of Lent, but I really mean those values or principles that the Lenten season supports in us and helps us to grow, but that we carry with us all the year long. So like the box full of darkness, the gifts associated with Lent are not always easy to receive or even recognize as gifts. And I know that's true because when I read that poem, I almost always want to say box full of chocolates instead of darkness. I would prefer the chocolate. So some of those virtues and practices that the season promotes, sacrifice, self-denial, stillness, humility, letting go, are the exact opposite of what the culture promotes. And I guess I say that, and it could be easy to think, well, that culture, it's so bad, it doesn't promote these values. But I think there really are some good reasons that we've moved in the direction as a larger culture away from these things. And I think it's important to understand them or think about them a little as we begin. I'll also say that when I returned to the church, so I grew up at Corpus Christi. It was a wonderful experience. I love that this series is called Voices of Women because in that congregation, I heard lots of women's voices and probably wouldn't even be here if I had it. So it was a wonderful place to grow up. I got to be an altar girl in the 70s. It was really good. But even still, in my mid-20s, like a lot of people I knew, maybe everybody eventually, I left the Catholic Church. I'd sometimes go to a Quaker meeting, but in general, I left formal religion. And when I returned in my mid-40s, so 20 years away, I came back with new eyes. And and also as a writer, I was very interested in exploring these very particular traditions or practices with new eyes. So things that I rejected out of hand, let's say as a teenager, I suddenly wanted to know more about. And I fully expected and knew that there were some things that I would be appreciative of. For instance, I love the psalm at Mass. I love the prayers, and I love the Mass. Mass is just a big celebration. So it's no surprise to me that there was a sacrament or the stained glass windows, or I wrote about the statue of the Virgin Mary that went missing from my church and I tracked her down. It was no surprise that those things to me I could appreciate. What was most surprising in my return to church has been my newfound appreciation for some of those qualities that I just mentioned, or practices, the silence, the humility. Humility is a big one for me anyway. One of the prayers that I'm going to share today is Litany of Humility. How many of you know that? Well, I mean, 3 years ago, even I would have just passed that one right up. So, but what's most surprising is that those are the values that transformed my life. I want to say my spiritual life, but I'm just going to say my life and my relationships more than anything. So that's what I want to talk to you about today. And I want to share a couple of the tools that helped me, that I found along the way and that helped me, and that I hope will help you, or maybe you've already got it down, and maybe it will help other people. Okay. All right, I guess maybe I'll just ask why, I'll just put it out there. You don't need to come to the microphone, I bet you could just shout it out, but why is the Lenten season, and really again, I'm talking about those values associated with the Lenten season, but in particular Lent, although maybe at St. Mary's not so bad because you have a pretty good Lenten spread over there. You know, I don't even know why you do this, but compared to Advent, what are the symbols or practices that we associate with Advent?
Oh,
No, I'm going to Advent, then it's going to be compare and contrast. Yeah. Joy. Yeah. Calendars or candles? The wreaths, the candles. This year at our house, we had an Advent calendar with little French jams behind every door. It couldn't be more decorative. So joy, hope, wreaths, candles, trees, boxes of chocolate. Anything else? Anticipation, usually joyful. Now let's think about Lent. I'm just going to switch liturgical seasons. And when you think about the images, practices, or I guess words associated with this season, what comes to mind? Sorrow. Yeah. Sacrifice. Yes. Anything else? Stillness, quiet, silence. Somebody else said something over here. Yeah, the guy died is pretty right. I mean, exactly. You know, Lent begins with what? Ashes on the forehead. And either you get the word repent, right? Turn away from your sins, or that you're reminded that you are dust and to dust you will return. Compared to, let's say, these other liturgical seasons, and especially Advent, which are, I think, the two that stand out to a lot of us, it's tougher imagery to take, right? Sacrifice, self-denial, silence, the imagery of Jesus in agony on the cross, or suffering with the cross. I think that's why the gifts are sometimes so hard to see, because they come hidden under images that are very, very different. But I think we know that the most important or most meaningful transformations are wed to those periods of discomfort. I don't know who came up with this saying, but Father Bob Worth at Corpus Christi says a lot. You can't have a good Easter without a good Lent. Like, you gotta go through that to get to the good stuff. Not that you can't have an Easter without a Lent. Most people do. People get chocolate bunnies and baskets without ever. You know, as a culture, we haven't necessarily thrown away some principles of Advent, even the secular culture, but absolutely the principles and values associated with Lent have been either overlooked or flat out rejected. So I, in preparing for this talk, thought about why that is, and I came up with a couple reasons. even though we sort of just answered it by the way we talked about it. And I just want to go through those, and then we'll get into these handouts that you're going to share and some of these tools, the specific tools that have helped me. I think the first reason is the language and imagery. It's pretty laden. I mean, I remember being a kid and my mother every year would drag us on this crosswalk with a man carrying the heavy cross. And even though I understood, I think on some level as a kid, and maybe even appreciated some of what was going on, I was embarrassed. I hoped none of my friends would like drive by and see me like, what is she standing there praying with that big cross for? Or every year in the Passion Play, I loved being in the Passion Play. I always wanted to be Veronica, never got chosen as Veronica, still hold a grudge, but I loved it. I was okay being person number 3 or whatever, but what did I hear every single year? The pounding of that hammer, you know, and it hit me, and it was meant to hit me, but it's not an easy hit. You know, it's not as fun as hanging a wreath on the front door. So in the violent bloody, I remember watching, I don't know why our family didn't do it, but we never went up to kiss the feet of Jesus on Good Friday, but other people did. And that imagery was hard, or the stations, hard imagery. Giving things up without knowing exactly why. So, I mean, even until recently, I'm sort of ashamed to say, but I'd give things up for Lent as a sort of challenge, you know, a sort of willpower test. Like, I'm going to give up chocolate for the 40th time in my life, you know. I'll make it 2 weeks. And now I might still try to give up chocolate, but I feel like I have a better understanding of what that's about. I think a lot of times, though, we don't connect the dots about why there's a giving up or a doing of and what that is leading to. So I think that's the first reason. The second reason is that the world culture has changed drastically in the past 50 or 60 years. I guess the world's always changing. I guess 100 years ago, somebody would be saying the same thing, but really drastically during our lifetimes. And so things like, I'm thinking of women, but I think it's just people in general. I know when I was a young woman in the late 80s and 90s, suddenly there were self-help books everywhere that were like, releasing the shame that binds you, or, you know, I don't know, but this whole self-help and movement toward therapy instead of bearing your pain alone changed the culture in a big way, as has the internet and the way that we share. The idea of suffering silently is gone, and that's a good thing. But I think people have, you know, really gone with this, and so we rejected notions of sin and hell. And we've also, especially related to sexuality and gender and many other things, but I think as a culture, rightly so, people began to say, well, wait a minute, I don't know if I want to feel this bad all the time about myself. I feel like maybe I actually am a child of God. And then they walked right out of church because they didn't feel like that message was being given. And then some people, especially women, I think the generation before our own, or at least, you know, like my grandmother's generation, the whole idea of being silent or humble or sacrificing your needs for others, younger women saw that that didn't necessarily lead to a good life or fulfilling life. And so again, it was rejected wholesale, sort of like throwing the baby out with the bathwater, but that, I think that's a part of it. People who felt like outsiders were less willing to embrace even more pain, humility, fear, doubt. The third reason is that these principles can have a really negative side, especially if they're not fully understood or if they're not integrated into a dynamic spirituality. And I would say spirituality based in love. So for instance, self-denial can look a lot like self-injury or lack of care. Surrender can look a lot like apathy or losing faith. Humility can actually look like humiliation or shame or low self-esteem. Acceptance or being too open, which is a great virtue, but if you do it too much or if it's not integrated, it could look like you're a pushover, or maybe you refuse to speak up when you know that you should, because being true humility is not silence. But I think that as a culture, we've misunderstood some of these qualities as we've rejected them. Brokenness, imperfection, dying looks a lot like losing, and we're not here for that. Like we would rather pass those things up as a culture.
And then lastly, I think we're just not wired for discomfort. I mean, there's a reason that I'm bringing up chocolate for the third time. I mean, if there were chocolate there, I'd go for it and not the spinach. And I believe most people can relate to that. So whether you're Catholic, Jewish, secular, humanist, it's just not easy to sit with discomfort, to give things up. 40 days in the desert, hard pass. You guys know hard pass? My students say that all the time. Hard pass on that. No thanks. Even when we know that this retreat or the embracing of these practices will strengthen our relationship with God, it's still not easy. So of course these are an easy group to overlook. Actually, let me just see if anybody wants to respond to any of that before I go into these 3 very specific tools that I found over the past couple of years that have helped me so much with some of these ideas. Any general responses? Yes.
Just a quick easy one. I was reading recently about giving things up Lent, and he, in the book he and I said, concentrate on the need, don't concentrate on go ahead and give it up, but don't hold that in front of you, hold Christ in front of you.
Right, because then that becomes the thing, right? Again, with chocolate. When I give up chocolate, I'm not thinking too much, although lately I think I do that a little better. You can tie it in, but the tendency is to then put that thing as the object, the whole objective even. And then there's 2 people over here.
Give the microphone.
Okay, thank you.
What was the first part of that question? Oh, well, I'll tell you what, that is a great question. I think that because I didn't use my voice when I was your age, and I was embarrassed about a lot of things in my life or confused, I didn't talk about it. So I think one day, that I know it's a long answer. It's a long answer. It's like, get to the point. But the point is, I got motivated to share my story. I wanted to share my story. Yeah, I think it's a different kind of book. I don't know how to do animations. All right, thank you. So we're going to go into the 3 handouts, which half of you, maybe not even half of you have, but the first one actually has a painting or a copy of a painting here of Utah. This is by my husband, Jim Mott, who does a lot of paintings of night scenes. And for some reason, he always has these utility poles in there. But and they look like crosses, right? So there are these moody things. But this I won't read the entire thing. It's a copy of meditation by Father Richard Rohr. And what I really want to share is the image. First of all, the quote, and I don't know that it's his originally, but I heard it from him. The quote is that pain that's not transformed will be transmitted. And so if you look around at the pain in our culture, we can see that when you can't transform your pain or sit with it, it will be transmitted, whether it's generationally or to our neighbors. And then he has this really great image of Jesus being the ultimate transformer, that if you think about power lines, which is why I included this image, if you think about telephone lines or power lines, there's those strings that run from pole to pole to pole. And that's how it is for a lot of us. We receive something uncomfortable, pain, irritation, and some of us, I'll just say I do this, I get grumpy and I just transmit that to the next person. Whereas Jesus and other people have learned to take that in and to transform it. So I tried to choose an image that had a little transformer. It looks like a caterpillar or something. It doesn't look like a transformer, but well, caterpillar is a good image too. But so that image, that pain that discomfort, that stillness, all of it comes in, it's held and it's transformed. And so you could read the entire, and I hope that you will read the entire handout on your own, but I think I'm just going to share 2 paragraphs from the back. I'll read them aloud. And I just realized I keep holding stuff in front of my face. Sorry, Zoom. So Richard Rohr writes, as an example of holding the pain, picture Mary standing at the foot of the cross, or as in Michelangelo's Pieta, cradling Jesus's body. One would expect her to take her role wailing or protesting, but she doesn't. We must reflect on this deeply. Mary is in complete solidarity with the mystery of life and death. It's as if she's saying, there's something deeper happening here. How can I absorb it just as Jesus is absorbing it, instead of returning it in kind? Consider the analogy of the energy circuits. This is what I just talked about. Most of us are relay stations. Only a minority are transformers, people who actually change the electrical charge that passes through us. Jesus on the cross and Mary standing beneath the cross are classic images of transformative spirituality. They do not return the hostility, hatred, accusations, or malice directed at them. They hold the suffering until it becomes resurrection. That's the core mystery of Christianity. He says it takes our whole life to begin to comprehend this. It comes to us when we're older versus younger. So that's the first thing that I wanted to share. It's just that image, because when I heard him say it, it changed things for me. And even when I catch myself being a transmitter instead of a transformer, you know, where I'm sort of grumpy at the person in the morning before I get my coffee. That's not a very good excuse, but it's what happens. I'm at least that image comes to me and I think, okay, how can I transform this thing that's happened? And I think I'll go on to the second one because there are some questions. Actually, there's some questions with this one. Let me look at time. Okay, 12:30. We'll just take a couple minutes, but the question that I wrote several questions on the back of this handout. Who are or have been the transformers in your life? How did they manage this? Second question, when have you been able to transform pain to love? Share an instance. And lastly, what can you do during this holy season that might strengthen your ability to transform versus transmit your fear, anger, resentment, or pain? Because I have 2 more I want to go through. And the last one, the litany of humility, is my absolute favorite. I just want to have you spend just a couple minutes talking to the people at your table. Just answer the question, you know, like, who have been examples of this for you? And I'll let you know when 2 minutes is up.
Thank you. I'll invite you to our table. There
Are
we
we
go.
zooming in with?
Yes, we're zooming. There we
Hi,
go.
other ladies on the Zoom. I see maybe Gloria. I don't
Yeah.
have my glasses.
Yep. Gloria,
Seven other people.
Barb, Nancy. I can't read them either from here. Heidi. Okay. So transformative people.
Can you send me an example of
Oh,
what it means to be Christian, like a true Christian? And my mother-in-law, even though she is a Universalist Unitarian, is also another gorgeous example to me, just someone who, no matter what is going on, does not receive it, put it back into the universe. Positive. There's very few people in my life that I think that's what I always strive to do. I don't always do.
for me, my grandfather, I was a young kid, probably those girls' age, when I was helping him mend fence posts way back in the farm. And we hiked, you know, what felt like forever. We got there, he took one swing with the axe to fix the fence, and the axe handle broke. And he just said, we have to go back so I can make a new axe handle. I mean, he didn't swear, he didn't stomp his feet, he didn't turn red. He just said, we have to go back. And I'm going, you gotta be kidding me. You know, I say that a lot. You gotta be kidding me. So I do react, you know, it's just, it's a habit. It's a habit to react like that instead of saying, okay, that happened now, I have to turn around and do something different. And that's so hard to do, because when we're so goal oriented, you know, it's like, I gotta get to here, from here to there and get out of my way.
Okay, finish up whatever thought you're having. I'm sorry to cut into your
So
conversation.
I'm gonna ask Jesus to help me not push people out of the way while I'm trying to get to my goal.
I like that y'all are just ignoring me.
Yeah.
Yeah. These are deserving of a lot more time, and hope maybe you'll sit with them on your own, you know. So let's hear from maybe one or two people about what came up for you, if you're willing to share, and if you don't want to, it's okay.
Yes.
I would like to talk about my mother. She was such an important person in my life. She had a very tough life in that her father deserted her family when she was only in high school. She had to quit school and to help support, get a job and help support her family. And then when she did marry, my father's sister was not always the best person to her. But when something happened to that woman, my mother was the very first one there to comfort her. And then later on, when she was in her late 70s, and she went to Ireland to meet with family, there was apparently a discord there. And they told her, don't go to this house because this person is difficult. But mother went and really resolved some of those issues. So my mother was Jim.
Yeah,
Mhm. Thank you.
those people really are so special. Like, how do they do it, right?
Can you come up? I can't reach you.
Yeah, just one more and then.
Okay.
Yeah. What we talked about a little bit is the horrible epidemic of violence. And you just can't believe the news. But what's happening is pain is just being transformed. And it goes all the way back in most of the cases to the traumas of being a slave. And just how, and nobody has transformed that pain. They just keep transmitting it. And then the other thing we talked about was how community can help you. And then I said, you know, I worry about all the young people like you who left the church, and then the community is gone. And so what are you going to do except transmit your pain? So that was our thing.
Yeah, that's great. You know, I
Thank
have
you.
nieces and nephews in city schools. They're non-white, but I don't know would matter whether they were white or not, but that's city schools, right? Like it tends to be lots of people of color who suffer, but I worry about them all the time because of the violence, but also because none of my sisters, there's 7 kids in my family and no one goes to mass. And I respect and understand the reasons, but they don't have that community. They don't have even an emblem or example of how to transform. Yeah, and I see your hands over there, but I'm going to get you next time because I want to go on to the next one. So thank you. So one of the questions is like, well, how do you transform that pain? I think it takes a whole lifetime if you can do it, right? I don't think it's an easy thing. That's partly why it's so much easier to relay it. That even if you transform a day, the next day comes and I don't know, maybe bills are due or who knows what. It's really difficult to transform. But the next handout or tool that I want to share is called the welcoming prayer. Some people call it the welcoming practice. Have you guys heard of this? Okay, well, I'm glad. I thought you'd all know it and you'd say, yes, I'm a trained practitioner. So this I also learned in my time at the Living School, which was a 2-year program studying with 3 people, Father Richard Rohr, Cynthia Bourgeau, who's an Episcopal priest, yeah, and Jim Finley. And so one of the sessions that I attended during our time in New Mexico was Cynthia talking about this welcoming prayer. She said, call it a practice. It's not really a prayer. I'm not so sure it matters what you call it, But the idea is this. And so there, again, there's a handout maybe on your table, but I'll read the key components and I'll share digital copies of this later. Basically, this was, I want to say it was created by a Catholic lay woman named Mary Mazowski. And she worked with Father Thomas Keating about centering prayer, and she was very interested in biofeedback and growing her relationship with God. So basically, her theory was instead of running away from pain, we should actually welcome it. And when I first heard that, I thought, I will never do that. I will never, because I'm just wired to avoid confrontation or sadness. You know, I don't know that I want to sit there and not just sit there, but say, welcome sadness. I don't know that I could really do it. Well, guess what? I learned how to do it, and I'm not an expert by any means, but it's been helpful. So for instance, just I drove up from Richmond on, I think Thursday, and Friday I had an appointment at the Pflaum Eye Institute at Strong, which had more people than here in the waiting room. And they were all loud and eating their Big Macs or whatever, like everybody was just in each other's face. And then I didn't have my coffee, and then this girl comes in with a beautiful cup of coffee, and I just wanted that. I was not feeling happy at the Pflaum Eye Institute. And I started to feel myself get really grumpy. And I think we all do this, but we don't call it, we don't maybe go through these steps. So this is just a way to do it. But I stopped myself and I said, you're just feeling irritated. You're also a little envious of that coffee. And you also are being incredibly impatient, because it took totally about 2 hours to get through the whole process. But guess what? Everybody else had eye problems and they needed to go through that process. So once I was able to stop it, it turned around so completely. That's why I'm sharing it. At some point, I actually kind of felt like I was being, this is going to sound a little silly, but I felt not only connected to the people with their Big Macs and coffees, but I felt held by God in that waiting room. Like I actually felt very connected and sort of loved, and everything got better. Everything. So I don't do that often. That's why I have to share that example. But the welcoming prayer, again, you could read more about it, but basically the idea is instead of leaving it, to go into it. And there are how many steps? 3 steps to prayer or practice. The first one is to focus or sink in, to feel the feeling. So when you first notice an emotion, or they don't even want you to notice the emotion, but your body reacting, because usually something happens in our body before we even label an emotion. But when you first notice that like twisting gut or red face or whatever it is for you, focus on the sensation in your body. Ask yourself where you're feeling it. Feel it without judgment. Don't think about why you're feeling it or what it means. Don't tell stories. Just let yourself feel it. When you stop and observe the emotion without repressing or justifying it, it's easier to let it go, is the theory there. You don't have to do anything. You just have to notice. Step 2 is welcoming. So whatever the sensation is, you welcome it by saying to yourself, welcome pain. That's a really strange thing to say. We didn't say that. Welcome pain. Welcome frustration. Welcome hunger. You know, welcome envy. It's the sensation that was felt in the first step that's being welcomed. This is really important. It's not the situation that brought it on, because that situation maybe shouldn't be welcomed. That may be something you're going to have to deal with, but you're really welcoming the sensation that leads to the emotion. By doing this, an inner hospitality and unconditional presence is developed. Welcome whatever you're experiencing, accept that your feelings are there and you can just be the way you are without trying to change it. And then the last step, which people who teach this say is really important that you don't get to too quickly, because sometimes I'll go like, oh, I'm welcoming my pain. Thanks. And then I'll go. Then I'll be like, I'm out of here. I'm going on to pleasure now. But the third step, letting go, should only be practiced once you've really sat with that feeling for a bit. The letting go step incorporates the attitude of let it be. Surrender requires us to leave behind our wants, needs, and demands on the spiritual journey, giving up the adversarial or grasping position, and making space to experience our union with God as a primary importance. That sounds so lofty, and yet it's possible, you know? Don't rush to let go. Don't push the feeling away. Stay with that sensation, alternating between observing and welcoming. Let go of the need to fix anything. Wait until the emotional spike has passed. And then there's a prayer that you say at the end. There's actually a pretty long prayer that you could say at the end, but it's been shortened because I think people need to move on with the next thing. I let go of my desire for security, affection, and control, and embrace this moment as it is. So I just have a reflection question here, which is when we resist, basically when we don't welcome those feelings, partly it's because we've never been told to welcome those feelings. We've been told or modeled everything to avoid them. But when we do avoid them, we usually incorporate some sort of substitute. It could be food, alcohol. It could be a behavior, trying to control or making things nice really quickly. But those substitutes are in the way of a genuine resting in God and his provision. Most of us become very good at this, especially our brand of whatever it is. So the question that I'll ask you, again, just for 2 minutes, is what are some of the ways that you avoid or substitute the true welcoming of whatever comes your way? Any questions? Oh, no, just go with it. Take your 2 minutes.
Yeah. No, I understand too. Friend of mine is telling me. Yeah. It's constant. They're actually feel like I don't know. Not like you. I
Okay, finish up whatever you're sharing. And again, I don't like to do this because I'm eavesdropping and you're having some good conversation. I just want to get to that third tool, which is the litany of humility. I had a few extra copies, so I just put them on the tables. Who has heard of the litany of humility? Oh, okay. How do you hear of it?
My desk yesterday and it was like piles of stuff and I came across that there.
Yeah.
And I think
Oh, cool.
somebody brought it and opened it with it. And so I'm gonna pay this through that.
Oh,
So
wonderful.
I had probably as of yesterday, so it's so funny that you're.
Yeah. I'm also again glad that I thought my fear was that not everybody had heard of it and prayed it every single morning. And so, you know, my last tool would be a dud. But the Litany of Humility, like I joked earlier, is a prayer that I guarantee you for most of my life, I would have absolutely walked away from. I just don't like the language of it. Humility, and wait till I'm gonna read it. But I would have really, really struggled with it as a younger woman. And I only just discovered it last year. I was listening to somebody else talk about spirituality, and they talked about this litany of humility, which Mother Teresa prayed. And so something about it resonated. So I said, I better get a copy of this. So this is the copy. This is sort of the formal copy. There are other versions floating around. And what we're going to do today with the remaining time is have you write your own version of this, or your own, put your own spin on it, because I think it's a great litany for Lent. I've been saying it every day for, I don't know, 6 months. And I don't believe in magic or any of that, but it has changed the way that I relate to other people in a massive way. And it seems appropriate for Lent. So Litany of Humility. Oh, Jesus, meek and humble of heart, hear me. From the desire of being esteemed, deliver me, Jesus. From the desire of being loved, deliver me, Jesus. From the desire of being extolled, deliver me, Jesus. From the desire of being honored, deliver me, Jesus. From the desire of being praised, deliver me, Jesus. From the desire of being preferred to others, deliver me, Jesus. From the desire of being consulted, deliver me, Jesus. From the desire of being approved, deliver me, Jesus. From the fear of being humiliated, deliver me, Jesus. From the fear of being despised, deliver me, Jesus. From the fear of suffering rebukes, deliver me, Jesus. From the fear of being calumniated, deliver me, Jesus. From the fear of being forgotten, deliver me, Jesus. From the fear of being ridiculed, deliver me, Jesus. From the fear of being wrong, deliver me, Jesus. From the fear of being suspected, deliver me, Jesus. That others may be loved more than I, Jesus, grant me the grace to desire it. That others may be esteemed more than I, Jesus, grant me the grace to desire it. That in the opinion of the world, others may increase and I may decrease, Jesus, grant me the grace to desire it. That others may be chosen and I set aside, Jesus, grant me the grace to desire it. That others may be praised and I unnoticed, Jesus, grant me the grace to desire it. That others may be preferred to me in everything, Jesus, grant me the grace to desire it. That others may become holier than I, provided that I may become as holy as I should, Jesus, grant me the grace to desire it. Maybe you could hear how challenging that is for our culture. You know, like I actually shared this with my husband, who's pretty progressive, and he said, I don't know if you should be saying all of that. And I was worried, like, you want other people to be more loved, but it just puts a different focus. The culture says, I want the opposite of all this. And when you can let it go, just like focusing on God instead of the giving up, it changes everything in a way that allows us to then relate to each other in a very different way, and paradoxically be more loved, be more seen, all of that. So, but of course, I couldn't just stick with this version because, well, calumny, I can barely say it. I'm like, I can't say it. What is it? I think it means to be put down, you know, that's the general, like, but you said it. Calumniated. Yeah. So if you love the word, you stick right with it. But I was like, I'm going to pray this every day. And then as I prayed this, I started to add new lines. Like my first one now is from the desire for sweetness. I'm a major sugar addict and I like things to be good. From the desire to be comfortable. So I wrote mine out and I keep changing, keep adding all these lines. Now I'm like that I might travel lightly upon this earth. Like everything is in this at this point. So what I invite you to do is I have some questions on the reverse side of the copy, and I'll just read them out because not everyone will have them. And I think for this one, you could take 5 or 6 minutes, but let me go ahead and read these to create your own litany for Lent. Step 1, using this litany as a guideline and starting place, which of the lines or ideas really resonate with you when you spoke them or heard them? Which do not? For example, the desire to succeed and be liked is huge for me. Which ones can you relate to? So think about that. And then step 2, consider your struggles outside of the realm of humility. They're all related. These might be minor challenges that nonetheless shape your relationships in your lives. Mine include impatience or addiction. Well, by now you all know I have an addiction to sweets. These might be the things we traditionally give up for Lent, the sort of smaller things that lead to the bigger. And then step 3, consider your fears, because this litany about 3/4 of the way through switches to fears instead of let me desire. Consider your fears. Coming from a family with 7 kids and 1 parent, one of my anxieties is being overlooked or not getting my share. So list a few of yours. And then finally, following the formula of the litany, and I don't expect that you'll write it all out in the next couple of minutes, but maybe this is something you can work on over the next couple of days. But using that template, from the desire to be blank, deliver me. From the fear of being blank, deliver me. From my longing for blank, deliver me. Write your own prayer. Make it your very own litany. It may be a personalized litany of humility or a more general litany for Lent. Say it every morning if you want to, and whenever you pray, and notice the changes that come into your life and your heart. So why don't you go ahead? Well, first of all, are there any questions about that? Okay, go ahead and let's use 6 minutes of our remaining 7 to work on some of these questions.
Okay. So I'm going to hold the questions up for you if you want to look at them. See if you can read that. Okay. There's step 1. Using the litany of humility as a guideline and starting place. Which of the lines or ideas resonate, which do not? Step 2.
But I will say that the only reason I heard
Leave this up for a few minutes. So you can
invited hello. And it's really very bad for somebody. like-
Hello, I like it too.
For
Yeah.
Somebody like yourself. Yeah, yeah.
You know,
but
it's funny, I just saw that on social media, him
I
touting
put it
the
out last week after church. Very much. And then I downloaded it finally and with it everything. For somebody like myself who's siblings who were raised Catholic, but I was not. I was a student. So I sort of brought
Trying to
myself
get
up
this-
so much back. Because we've never forced it.
It's like
So-
backing up a trailer.
At a loss.
Yeah.
So these things are really valuable. I have to say.
Yeah.
That I hung up on that word too, that seemed. But
Okay, I'm going to show you the other side. So one of the things that I have to be delivered from, I know, is the desire to control things. And yeah, they're free. They're free. No, they were all free.
They are playing the cards that came up last week.
I also have to fast from being right. You know, and I was so freeing when I said, I don't know the answer to that. You know,
It really is.
it's so freeing. It's like, wow, you don't have to have the answer and you don't have to be right. The first time somebody said, I don't know, I did something wrong. And I said, geez, I did that wrong, didn't I? And instead of trying to cover up or run away from it or dismiss it somehow, I just said, yes, you're right. I did it wrong.
See, and I think that's the one freedom that I've always had in my siblings. How can you know that? Has never put you in front of all this I love to learn.
Now, I would say Zoom friends, that I would know how to copy this and scan it and get it to you. There is a way to do that, but I need your email addresses. So if you would email me at s.dor@gmail.com or email Roz. Roz, and she will let me know, and I'll get copies to her. I'll get digital copies to her, okay, of all the stuff from today.
Thank you very much. I really like these so much.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah.
know. But let me tell you. 30, it's just, it's impressive if you have that time. But I'll just do it now. I just never.
Okay. So we're also talking at our table about online opportunity called Halo, HALO.
That's how I.
It's something you download on your phone or your computer, and you can listen to the daily readings, you can do the rosary, you can do a Lenten reflection. They've got a 40-day program you can do. It can come up on your phone automatically, or you can log into it as you want to. And we're finding it very helpful, even people our age, even though it was, designed for the smartphone generation. We become that generation, many of us. And so it's just another opportunity for daily prayer. If you need another one, I know a lot of you have your own daily prayers that you follow. So.
Is it a podcast?
Yes, it is a podcast too, right? Where's the Halo flyer? Was it in the bulletin today? Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I had one of my good Protestant friends from Tennessee called me and said all about this, like just yesterday. I had never heard of it.
Yeah.
She said it is wonderful, and she goes, "Oh, I'm getting what you Catholics are doing about Lent," and she's doing it. Wonderful.
Yeah, Catholics don't own Lent.
That's right. No, she's like all into it. She says, "Oh, it's great." So she told me to look into it. So now that is my sign. I'm going to do that.
Yeah. And it's been around for a while. I just forgot about it.
We're going back to our talk, okay?
So I almost was, when I was thinking about what to do today, I'm like, oh, I could just do the litany of humility because it's been such a game changer for me. But I really see these three things working together. The idea of transforming versus transmitting, the ability to sit with it, and then this litany all work together for me. And they're definitely related to these Lenten ideals, but they, I think, are more related to the Christian ideals of how to live. So I know this was a lot, and I wish we had more time for you to not only write your litanies, but to come up here and read them. That would be the best. But we now are out of time, although maybe do we have, I don't know how you want to start and right at 1?
If people have questions, we'll.
Yeah.
So if people have to leave, we understand.
Sure.
Yeah.
But if anyone has a question, please feel free to
Or
ask.
comment.
Or comment, yeah. Yes.
You were talking about looking forward to the pain or trying to lean into
Yeah.
it just reminded me of that we're not dread the next contraction, but you're supposed to welcome the next contraction. And looking forward to the end result, you're gonna have your baby in a moment, so, but when you said that.
Such a great analogy. Because what's on the other side of it, right? Yeah, but then you have this new life, right? Once you do. Plus, I don't think that a lot of us are going to go like, oh, I really invite pain into my life in general, except for childbirth. We don't, but it's more like when it shows up. Like in that poem by Mary Oliver, someone gave her that box of darkness. She didn't go shopping for it. But so then once she got it, probably that poem makes it sound like she realizes it's a gift right away. I bet you there was probably 50, 60 years in between, so it's not an immediate thing. Thank you for that comment.
Anything else?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Sonia.
Thank
Can
you
we
for
have a
your attention.
nice
Thank you for the
Sonia?
invitation.
I have one more thing to do before we stop today. I'd like to introduce, Deacon Duncan Harris. Deacon, you stand up. Deacon Harris is our new, social justice. Thank you, everyone. Have safe travels.
Have a great day, Barb.
Thank you. Same to you, Nancy.
hi
Hope
to
things
Jen.
go well. Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Mr. Ron.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Oh, yeah.
Excuse me, if you didn't get a copy of this, scan them and give them to Roz. So you get Roz's email. Email Roz, they didn't want to change, you should have the law.